Welcome to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series, episode 79. Today we're diving deep into a case. Well, a case that really chills me to the bone. The 2010 Ahmedabad Bus Murders. So picture this. You're on your usual commute home. Everything seems perfectly normal.
Right.
And suddenly, your ride becomes a scene of unimaginable terror. That's the reality that unfolded one July evening in Ahmedabad. And to this day, the attackers remain unidentified, just lost to the shadows.
Yeah, it's really the way it just shatters our perception of safety. You know, those everyday spaces we take for granted. Public transportation, I mean, for so many of us, it's just part of our routine. We just assume a certain level of security, in that shared space. But the Ahmedabad case just throws that assumption right out the window.
It does. You're absolutely right. It's a stark reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. And the material we've gathered. It paints a harrowing picture of that night, July 18th, 2010. A little after 9:15 p.m., a bus is making its way through a quiet residential area of Ahmedabad. On boarders or ordinary people. Folks heading home from work, maybe some students, people running errands, just a typical cross-section of city life. But then, in a horrifying instant, everything changes.
And that sudden shift from normalcy to chaos, it's truly chilling. One moment you're surrounded by the familiar rhythms of a bus ride, the next you're plunged into a fight for survival. That element of surprise, the sheer randomness of it, that's what makes this case so unsettling.
Yeah, the accounts I read, they describe a scene of utter pandemonium. There are arguments, then screams erupting, and suddenly two passengers are attacking others with knives. It was brutal, seemingly indiscriminate, with no apparent connection between the victims and the assailants.
And that lack of a discernible motive, that's a key challenge for investigators. Without a clear why, it becomes incredibly difficult to establish a pattern, to build a profile of the attackers. Think of it this way. The lack of motive is like searching for a puzzle piece without knowing what image you're trying to complete.
It's a puzzle with so many missing pieces. 4 people tragically lost their lives that night. A school teacher, a college student, 2 office workers, just ordinary people going about their lives, suddenly caught in a nightmare. And we can only imagine the trauma endured by those who survived, the scars, both physical and emotional, that they carried from that night.
It's crucial to remember that behind the headlines, behind the mystery itself, are real people whose lives were irrevocably altered. The victims, the families, the survivors, they all bear the weight of this unsolved case. A burden made heavier by the absence of answers.
The Ahmedabad police, from what I've gathered, conducted a very thorough investigation. They secured the crime scene, meticulously interviewed witnesses, gathered forensic evidence, and even explored potential connections to extremist groups, leaving no stone unturned. But it seems like every lead they pursued ultimately hit a dead end.
This really highlights the limitations inherent in even the most dedicated investigations. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, the pieces just don't fit. Eyewitness accounts, understandably, were fragmented and often contradictory. Police artists worked with witnesses to create composite sketches of the attackers, but the descriptions they provided were so inconsistent that multiple sketches were produced, none of which yielded any solid leads.
And then there's the forensic evidence, or rather the lack of conclusive findings. Fingerprints lifted from the bus were partial and smudged, likely from the struggle. Even with advancements in DNA analysis, a partial sample without a database match is like searching for a needle in a haystack.
It's a frustrating reality. Especially for the families seeking justice. You have these fragments of information, these tantalizing clues, but they don't quite connect. It's like having a puzzle where the pieces are warped, and no matter how you try to force them, they refuse to create a coherent picture.
So we're left grappling with this mountain of unanswered questions. And that's where the speculation begins. The sources I read, well, they detail a number of theories about what might have happened that night, each with its own set of complexities and contradictions.
And that's what makes unsolved cases so captivating, don't you think? We're wired to seek explanations, to find patterns in the chaos, but sometimes, the more we try to make sense of the senseless, the deeper we're drawn into the mystery.
You know, as I was going through the accounts, the theory about a personal vendetta really stuck with me. The idea that the attack was targeted, with the other victims becoming collateral damage. But it just seems so illogical, wouldn't you agree? To orchestrate such a brutal attack on a public bus, risking the lives of so many innocent bystanders, it seems almost too risky, too reckless for a personal vendetta.
It's certainly a puzzling aspect of this theory. If the attack was indeed targeted, why choose a public bus as the stage? It raises questions about the attackers' motivations, their level of planning, and their willingness to inflict harm on those who had no connection to their alleged target.
Then there's the organized crime angle. The sources suggest the possibility of hired attackers, professionals skilled in disappearing without a trace. And when you consider the attacker's ability to vanish so completely, it does lend a certain weight to that theory.
It's a compelling angle, especially when we think about the level of expertise seemingly required to execute such a clean getaway. But again, we're faced with those missing pieces. If this was a professional hit, who orchestrated it and why? What was the motive behind targeting these specific individuals on that particular bus route?
And of course, we can't rule out the possibility of a random act of violence fueled by mental instability. It's a theory that aligns with the apparent lack of motive and the seemingly arbitrary selection of victims. But even then, there are those nagging inconsistencies.
Right. The precision of the attack, the attacker's ability to escape without leaving a trace. Those details don't quite fit the profile of a purely impulsive act. It suggests a level of premeditation, a chilling awareness of their surroundings. That seems to contradict the randomness we often associate with such acts.
It's like each theory brings us closer to understanding the puzzle, only to reveal another layer of complexity, another set of contradictions. Years have passed, and the Ahmedabad Bus Murders remain an open wound for the city, for the families of the victims, for the survivors who are still grappling with the trauma of that night.
And that brings us to the question of time and its impact on unsolved cases. Does the passage of time make it more or less likely that the truth will be uncovered? On one hand, memories fade, evidence deteriorates, and potential witnesses may move away or even pass away, making it harder to piece together what happened.
But on the other hand, time can sometimes be an ally in investigations. New technologies emerge. Cold cases are re-examined with fresh eyes. And sometimes, a tiny detail that seemed insignificant years ago can suddenly become a crucial clue.
Precisely. And that's what keeps hope alive, not just for investigators, but for the families of the victims. The idea that even after all these years, a breakthrough could occur. Maybe someone, somewhere, remembers something they saw or heard that night, something they dismissed as unimportant at the time, but which could now hold the key to unlocking the mystery.
I was particularly struck, by the way, the sources describe the impact of this case on Ahmedabad. It seems to have deeply shaken the city's sense of security. Public transportation, such a vital part of daily life for so many people, suddenly became tainted with fear, a reminder of the vulnerability we all share.
It's a common reaction to events like this. When violence disrupts our everyday routines, it forces us to reevaluate our perceptions of safety. We realize that the places we consider safe, the activities we take for granted, can be shattered in an instant.
The sources mention that in the aftermath of the Ahmedabad bus murders, the city implemented increased security measures. On public transportation, more CCTV cameras were installed. Police patrols were intensified, especially during late hours. It's a tragic reminder that sometimes it takes a horrific event to push for change, to make us confront the fragility of our perceived security.
And while those changes may provide a sense of reassurance, they also serve as a constant reminder of the event itself. Every time someone boards a bus in Ahmedabad, they might notice the heightened security, and that awareness can trigger memories of the attack, perpetuating a cycle of fear and unease.
So having explored the chilling details of this case, examined the various theories, and considered its lasting impact, what can we as those trying to understand this mystery take away from it?
I think one of the most important takeaways is the recognition that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable mysteries, the pursuit of truth and justice should never cease. We may never know for certain who committed these murders or why, but that doesn't mean we stop seeking answers. It's about honoring the victims, their families, and those who survived. By continuing to ask questions, to examine the evidence, and to hold on to the hope that someday the truth will be revealed.
And for you, our listener, this deep dive is an invitation to ponder the questions this case raises. What does it tell us about the nature of random violence? How do we reconcile the need for security with the desire to move through the world without fear? Perhaps by engaging with these questions, we can contribute to a deeper understanding of the complex factors that lead to such tragedies and work towards preventing them in the future.
The sources we've examined, well, they offer a wealth of information, but they also highlight the limits of what we know.
And sometimes, acknowledging those limits, it's the first step towards seeking new perspectives, new ways of approaching the unsolved mysteries that continue to haunt us. Was there anything in particular from the case files that you found especially striking or thought-provoking?
Well, one of the most chilling aspects for me is the attacker's ability to vanish so completely. I mean, in this age of surveillance technology, it's almost inconceivable that two individuals could commit such a brazen act of violence in a public space and simply disappear.
Yeah, it really speaks to the audacity of the crime, doesn't it? They emerged from the shadows, unleashed chaos, and then melted back into obscurity, leaving a trail of devastation and unanswered questions.
It suggests a certain level of planning and awareness. They knew how to strike, how to escape, and how to avoid leaving behind any identifiable traces. It's a level of precision that's both fascinating and terrifying.
And it adds another layer of complexity to those theories we've been discussing. If it was a truly random act of violence, fueled by impulse, how did they manage such a clean getaway? It almost suggests a level of premeditation. That seems to contradict the notion of impulsive action.
You're right. It's those contradictions, those pieces that don't quite fit, that keep us coming back to these unsolved mysteries. They challenge our assumptions about human behavior, about the limits of our knowledge, and about our ability to make sense of the seemingly senseless.
We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? We've examined the details of the Ahmedabad bus murders, explored the various theories, and considered the profound impact this case has had on the city and its people. But as with any deep dive into a mystery like this, we're left with more questions than answers.
And that, I think, is the essence of a truly compelling mystery. It's those unanswered questions that keep us engaged, keep us thinking, keep us searching for those elusive pieces of the puzzle. That might finally complete the picture.
So to our listener, we leave you with this final thought. Imagine yourself back on that bus in Ahmedabad. On that fateful July night, what details would catch your attention? What clues might you notice that others missed? Put yourself in the shoes of the investigators, the victims, the survivors, and perhaps by engaging your own curiosity and your own critical thinking skills, you might stumble upon a new perspective, a fresh insight that could shed light on this dark mystery.
And who knows, maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to finally unravel the secrets of the Ahmedabad Bus Murders.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of India's most perplexing unsolved cases. If you found this deep dive into the Ahmedabad Bus Murders as fascinating as we did, be sure to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle Unsolved Mystery Series. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth, wherever it may lead.